College Football 27 has just launched, and I'm sure you all are neck deep in your dynasties or still waiting to start your first one in the next few days. And with the launch of the new game, I want to give you all my ideas on how to have the most realistic dynasty each and every time on the new game. With a ton of new features added and having more realism than ever, it's definitely a great year for college football. So be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button if you're new so you never miss out on any College Football 27 content. And let's get right in on how to make your next rebuild the most realistic possible. I do want to preface all of these tips are made with the implication that you don't cheese the game or use broken mechanics. There will likely be recruiting glitches at some point with the new system being implemented, and if you use those or other ones, none of these things on the list will make any difference on how realistic your dynasty will be. Outside of that, this first section will be pretty quick. The first step is to always update your sliders at the start of every one of your dynasty playthroughs. Whether you create your own or you find them online, there are a ton of options from realistic sliders all the way to super challenging ones. I create some on my page, so be sure to check those out, but I tend to even update mine as I play throughout my dynasty. No slider set is perfect, and EA constantly updates logic to gameplay, so they mess with how sliders perform almost weekly. Just check every so often if you feel like the game has gotten too easy or doesn't play the same. Along with this, I always get questions on what settings I use for passing in-game, and over the years I have found that revamped passing offers the most middle ground approach of relying on stats but also still giving the user some input. This is more of a preference, but I wanted to get that out of the way for those who were wondering. Team selection is the second thing to consider when starting your dynasty, and to have the most realistic experience, you need to start from the bottom of the totem pole. If you are planning on sticking with one team, go ahead and jump to the next sections, as this one won't be necessary for you. But there are two ways to start from the bottom and work your way up. The first is to start as a 0 or 1-star program as a head coach, and the other would be taking a coordinator job at any school for the first few years before you get your first head coach job. To make this even more realistic, use the list of open coaching jobs on screen from last year's real life coaching carousel. As you move up the ranks, things to consider would be how successful you have been and where the schools you are considering are at in the current dynasty run. For example, if you have been at Akron for at least 3 seasons and went 20-18 with a bowl win and a bowl loss, you probably would only get a single-star program promotion. But if instead you went 30-10 with a few conference titles, multiple bowl wins, and possibly even a college football playoff appearance, you would likely have a plethora of offers even as high as a 4-star programs. With a new feature where you can throw your hat into the consideration for any head coaching job in all of college football, this is probably going to be the easiest coaching carousel we've seen in the last few years. But just keep the things I just mentioned in mind when you're picking your team and where you're possibly may coach for the next handful of years. And before we get to the rest of the video, make sure you subscribe today so you don't miss any of the College Football 27 content we have planned for this year. I'm super excited for you all to see it. It should be a great year of college football. And also, if you're on mobile, hit that hype button down below. It helps out small channels grow, and I would be super grateful if you all could do that for me. But anyways, let's get back to the video. Next up is recruiting as a whole. This section is going to be a little longer, so buckle in. While there are a plethora of different ways we have made recruiting more realistic with the house rules over the last few years, in College Football 27, we have the most true-to-life simulation yet. With NIL now in the game, that is the biggest differentiator in the game between small programs and powerhouses, and should provide a decently tough road as you progress through the years. If you want an all-inclusive guide to recruiting, check out the tagged video in the top right-hand corner, or be sure to check back in a few days if you're seeing this ahead of the full launch of the game. But to keep things as realistic as possible, I have started to keep within my suggested NIL expense breakdown the game gives you in the program overview. Typically it suggests a dynasty point spend per season on recruits. So sticking to that within a few percentage points most years, instead of just spending 100% each year, will make you pick and choose your preferred recruits as you progress during those smaller program years of your run. Once you hit the big saves though, offering every 5-star 30 to 40% above their asking price also falls out of the norm most of the time. So be sure to manage how much you offer, because even at the Ohio States of the world, most rosters are built on those 4-star and even 3-star players. Outside of the NIL portion, selecting players who are realistic to your program also adds more immersion. I personally don't go looking for those 3 free-star NIL guys to fill up my roster. Most big-time programs are competing for guys with NIL allocations, so be sure to spend on nearly all of your players as it will be better to level out your NIL spending. One of the best ways I have found to do this is just to use the recommended tab and don't really just go and isolate certain groups of players based off of certain things. The recommendation tab does a good job and it does limit you very significantly, but I feel like this gives you a good base of recruits that seem realistic to your program. One last thing for this section is scouting. When scouting players, it is normal to scout them fully so you know what you're going to get next season. But the most realistic scouting method I have found is to only use 2 clicks of scouting. This reduces a lot of info on the player, but replicates real life as you never truly know what you're going to get with the player. It also adds extra importance to the recruiting archetype, since if you increase the amount of scouting you get per click, you can know more about a player, which really mimics how bigger programs typically do more with the resources they have, and they typically get those better players because they know more about those players. New to College Football 27 this year is Coach Mode, and that is by far the most realistic way to play your Dynasty. Taking the playmaking out of your hands and having to depend on your players that you recruited to go win games is a feeling that is hard to replicate. While I do suggest you try it out at least once, most players prefer to play on the field with the guys on their team. So to make that choice more realistic, you will need to do a few things within the game. On the offensive side of the ball, I like to put in a play limitation for each play to limit the amount of times the plays can be ran. This helps a lot as the coach suggestions tend to repeat on a ton of the same plays. Also, having the cooldown on will prevent you from running the same plays back to back. While you can choose any playbook, picking a play style and sticking to it really adds depth to your run. If you are a ground and pound team, then sticking to the run unless you absolutely have to pass is realistic, even if it may cost you a game here and there. To help with this, go to your coach creation screen and select the style of play suggestions you want. I have put the cheat sheet on screen as to what each selection means and the style of play they offer up. On the defensive side, there isn't a ton of variation in plays like you see on the offensive side, but to build more realism, I player lock onto a specific player each play. While you don't need to lock onto them in theory, just don't switch stick or switch players mid-play, as that gives the user a steep advantage over the CPU and makes recruiting players with high awareness and great playmaking all the more important. EA has revamped how progression scales in College Football 27. One of the biggest changes is an increase to how expensive the speed set is as you progress with the player as they age. Outside of this, you can go either way with development and controlling it or letting it auto progress. I tend to go somewhere in between and focus on some of the better players and your younger guys who I think can be great down the road. I also don't use a progression penalty as that just undermines the progression logic within the game, but I do make sure to upgrade logically and not just dump all of my points into one stat to make the player a cheat code. I also start to unblock abilities as they open up, and I tend to focus on upgrading the stats that are more important to those abilities, as in theory, the abilities the player has should dictate the type of player that they are. Our second and last topic is the coach progression throughout the game. There are a ton of meta coach builds in the game, and that is great for those who are looking to speedrun through rebuilds. But if you are like me and you want to have a slow burn realistic experience, the best way to do that is to really identify what type of coach you want. This ties in really well with how you want to play on the field. For example, if you are a ground and pound team, you are likely to improve your running backs and linemen before other positions. The best way I have found to give myself an immersive experience is to do 2 things. The first is to give your coach a backstory, and by that I mean what position group did your coach possibly coach back in the day, and then where did they move up on the side of the ball and coordinate from. With those 2 things in mind, you can set artificial limits on what skills you can improve first. For this example, I'll use a linebackers coach and a defensive coordinator, so I could max out my linebackers ability and get all the defensive groups to level 3, but the offensive side of the ball would be stuck at level 2 until I hit the master level of that ability. This builds coach history straight into the game and makes choices way more strategic. As far as what archetype to start out as, it doesn't truly matter, and the same can be said for Coach XP game. Those 2 things are up to you and really the experience that you want to have in your dynasty. Lastly, one of the best ways to feel like you are in the world of college football is to have teams move from conference to conference over the course of your dynasty. Obviously, in the base game on console, you can't add or remove conferences, but still using headcanon is worthwhile. As we get more info on PC modding, I will make an updated video on custom conferences and the ability to manage that within the game. But outside of that, there are a few ways to manage moves. The easiest is just to use the prestige rating within the game and take note of some of the top teams in the conferences and their prestige ratings. Comparing that and their facilities to the teams in the potential conferences is pretty simple. The other way is to use an external tracker and highlight the top teams as you progress over the years. You can also find a ton of different 30-year rebuild guides on the channel where I give some possible future scenarios to make the moves seem more realistic as you play throughout your Dynasty runs. But with that, those are my 6 ideas to make your Dynasties more realistic and immersive through your playthroughs. I appreciate y'all tuning in, and be sure to leave a comment down below on what you all thought, or if you have any ideas of your own that makes the Dynasties more realistic for you all. The community is always looking for new things to try out, and I'm sure they would love those. But I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope y'all enjoyed, and as always, I'll catch you all in the next one.